Hey, 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 Fit Mama. Jen Oliver here, your host of the Fit Mama podcast. This is the work in to your workout. Hey, and welcome. I am so excited to bring you one of my faves today, Dr. Kerri Fullerton. She is an intuitive eating and body acceptance coach. She helps women escape the frustration, confusion, and the sense of defeat that comes from years of battling their weight. She helps these women find their peace and power within their bodies and their food. What she's most passionate about is raising a generation that doesn't look to their bodies for their happiness, self-worth, or their confidence. I love that. That is Dr. Kerri Fullerton. You're going to hear us chat away for the better part of a half an hour, talking all about her company, the Diet Rebellion, and her philosophy and her message. And I've been a follower and fan of the Diet Rebellion for over 4 years now. And I've had the pleasure of learning so much from Dr. Kerri. She is such a brilliant woman. She has so much knowledge. She has such a big heart. And what she helps women with is really nothing short of what all of us would benefit from. And that's what I love about her really openness about what's happening in our diet culture and what the diet culture even is. I didn't even realize I bought into the diet culture. This was what I was doing as a trainer, even having before and after pictures. And I learned myself what those before and after pictures feel like, look like, and work for me. And I don't include those in my business anymore. I don't include meal plans in my business anymore. I don't include weigh-ins or measurements in my business anymore. And before I knew Kerri, I did include those things. And, now raising girls, and she is a mother of one boy. And we talk about that in this podcast. And, Kerri's a friend of mine. We get really real and honest, and she's a beautiful human with so much wisdom to impart on the Fit Mamas. So sit down, relax, enjoy, and I'll see you on the other side. Hey, we're here with Kerri Fullerton. Dr. Kerri, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm so glad to have you on this podcast. I have been wanting this for months and actually since the inception, so that's almost years now. So thank you for being here with me. Kerri, as I introduced her, is from the Diet Rebellion. And from the day I met you and I started talking about this concept, it's blown my mind. It's changed my worldview on things in a whole wide range of categories. And the way you think is so enlightened to me. And I can't wait to dive into what you do. So first talk to us, Kerri. How was the Diet Rebellion born?
Well, it was born out of a lot of love and a little bit of anger.
Against who?
So angry has this wonderful role in our lives. Mm-hmm. And when it's directed at the right people, it can be pretty powerful. And I guess until I figured out where to direct it, it had been directed at me. So then I abused my body, I manipulated food, I had an eating disorder, I had very low confidence in myself, all of those things. And once I realized that the diet, fitness, and fashion industries had been screwing with my head my whole freaking life, and my mother's head, and my grandmother's head, that I started to really open up and understand that it wasn't my fault. It wasn't about me. And so then the Diet Rebellion, it formed out of love for patients too, for the same thing, that they'd come and see me for a variety of conditions. And of course we talk about food. Yeah. Of course we do. Food is medicine. Food is important. Mm-hmm. Nutrition has a massive impact on our health, obviously. But it wasn't the only thing, because I could give people plans, but they couldn't follow them because it's not just about food. Coincidentally is the name of the very first book I ever picked up that was along these lines, that first introduced me to this concept that maybe it's not my food that I need to change. And really it's my relationship with food that I needed to change.
I can't wait to dive into that. So take us back a little bit here to when you were
young and you were exposed to what? Because you talked about the media and your, parents and grandparents kind of deal.
Yeah.
So I want to hear from you because I know, you and I have shared on some of these stories in the past, but just, there have been generations of girls, women raised under certain assumptions, such as fat is bad, gaining weight equals ruining your life, or whatever, extremes could come. So talk to us now a little bit about that, because I really want to dive into what the landscape was and currently is, because I think we're all looking, especially as fit mamas, to navigate this world, which now has Instagram and all the rest of them, to add fuel to the fire of comparison and all the rest. So take us back to your childhood as a daughter of a mother who, had exposure to the media and was feeling this or that way about her own body. Let's talk about that.
Well, my mom, for as long as I can remember, was about to start on a diet, or beating herself up because she just stopped her diet.
Right.
I mean, that was the landscape around food and conversation.
So true.
Food was this, it's like this guilty pleasure. And I mean, you and I have talked so many times, like guilt and food should really not ever go hand in hand. Yeah. However, that is how we talk about food. Yeah. Her mom was always the same deal. I mean,
on a diet or about
always watching her weight. Yeah. She's 88 years old and still weighs herself every morning. Wow. And I mean, I love my grandma to pieces, and she's a riot, and she's a little spitfire, and I've learned so many good things from her. And I guess that's it, right? It's what we're passing down without even knowing that we're doing it. And it comes from a multitude of sources. Home is a big one. And this is not meant to inspire guilt in any fit mama, you or me, because, my kid has been raised in the most body neutral, food neutral home you can imagine. And he still has ideas about fat bodies and nutrition. He just came home from basketball practice and said he wanted a Fitbit because he wanted to track his calories.
Oh, wow. And he's 10?
10-year-old boy. Yeah. So I was like, wow. Yeah. Probably could have handled it better, but that's probably another interview. I freaked out. But with that said, so there's a movie called The Illusionists. I'll send you the link if I can find it. But it was
like
it in the show
a
$9 movie I bought, and it was totally worth every penny. But they talked about how the media has been manipulating and advertising, especially to women, and how much they fuel this I'm not good enough unless. And with women, it has been around food and about beauty and about fashion, right? Cellulite was never a thing until I think it was Vogue. I apologize, Vogue, if I'm throwing you under the bus, and it was a different magazine, but who wrote an article about cellulite and how bad it is, and suddenly it became a condition. Well, it's not a condition. It's something that we have, right? Wrinkles, aging, like it's across the board. And weight stigma and body image is one of the biggest, most dangerous of all of those, I would say. And it's, we've always revered whoever was in the magazines or whoever was in the movies. And so our pop culture dictates what kind of body we're supposed to have. And in areas where the native population has dark skin, they are going through treatments to lighten their skin. In areas where everyone's fair, we're trying to get tans and using tanning salons and dark. Like it goes across the board.
The grass is always greener. It seems.
Always. And the media and marketing, that's what they do. Yeah. They create if you want to be happy, if you want to be confident, look this way. Yeah. So, I mean, my grandmother grew up in that kind of environment. My mother grew up in that kind of environment. You and I are growing up in that kind of environment because it still hasn't changed. Yeah. I mean, where are we now? We're still in January. And excuse me, just look at the ads, right? Yeah. All the ads for the gyms and for the weight loss programs, and you want to feel good about yourself, no problem, change your body. Yeah. That's all it takes, right? And now they're spinning it a little bit because dieting became a bad word, right? Because we know We know the research consistently shows that dieting doesn't work.
Yeah.
That dieting does not result in lasting weight loss. That dieting does not take someone from fat to slim and keep them there. It doesn't work. We know this.
Yeah.
However, despite
Don't let the facts get in the way of a good goal.
Despite all that, the programs themselves haven't changed that much, just the way they're marketing them to us now. So now they talk about health, because health now is this moral issue as opposed to it being a personal issue, right? How we feed our children. And I'm sure that every fit mama can relate to this. The stress.
Stressful AF. Yeah.
The stress that these women are under, and they're trying to go back to work. They're expected to get their body back. Again, we need to do a totally different episode on that.
Another episode.
And then what they're feeding their children, and the amount of pressure is unbelievable. And so food that has historically in humans been this way to connect, a way to gather, it has huge emotional and social pieces to it, are just getting destroyed, right? Even just trying to go out for a meal with friends is now a very difficult thing, because so-and-so can't eat this and so-and-so can't eat that, and what about this and what about that? And it's starting to devise. You know, if one family chooses to go paleo and another family chooses to go vegan, how are they supposed to go out to dinner now? So that
you're right.
connection is starting to get lost, and it's just creating a huge amount of stress. So instead of all these programs giving us clarity and direction, which is what we're looking for, right? We just want to say, God, Jen, just tell me what to eat. Give me a meal plan. You and I have talked about this so many times, right? You and I don't provide meal plans for people, but they still ask, right? Just tell me what to eat. And it's giving our power away. We're giving it to someone else instead of holding it for our own selves and then wondering why it's not working. What wasn't ours to begin with?
Yeah, let's talk about giving our power away. You know, what does that mean exactly? Like, give me an example of how you see this show up in your naturopathic clinic, with your patients, or with your clients online. What are they presenting? What are they coming in with? And then how are you seeing them give their power away?
The things they probably say the most is, what the F am I supposed to eat? That's probably number one.
Yeah. I think there's a book called This is What the F You're Supposed to Eat.
Is there?
Yeah, Mark Hyman. Yeah.
But then, of course, you read that. And it's another form of restriction, because there's a whole whack load of stuff you're not supposed to eat. So still giving away power, right?
Yeah.
Giving away the understanding of what works for my body, right? Same with fitness, right? I mean, someone can come to you and you can show them all kinds of different things, but they ultimately have to do what their body says is right and wrong. And even in your own journey, in my own journey through injuries, what worked before is not going to work now.
No.
And so it's having that flexibility.
Yeah, and it's coming in with an idea that you're going to fix them, or that you're going to give them the right plan that's perfect for them. Is that like,
absolutely? And this is it. So they come to me, and this is what I did early in my practice. Someone would come in and say, help me create a meal plan.
I used to do it too.
Of course, right? Because it's what we do and it's what we learn. Like all of us, no matter what profession we're in, nurses, doctors, fitness trainers, nutritionists, dietitians, we learn to make meal plans. We learn to tell people, here's how many calories you need. We spend so much time on the what to eat, what not to eat, what to do, what not to do, macros, micros, like blah.
I know.
So we give them the what.
Yeah.
And they go off, and then it doesn't work in their life, and they come back and they feel like a failure.
Yeah.
And it's because it wasn't theirs to begin with. And I'm listening to Brene Brown's book, Dare to Lead. And
I love that one.
There's this beautiful part where she really goes through the different definitions of shame versus guilt.
Yes.
And that was really powerful for me, because those are two emotions that show up a lot within the world that I work with, and you as well. Fit mamas can relate to those.
For sure.
And it was really neat to know the difference is, so an example, one of Patrick's friends was playing and got caught in a lie.
Okay.
And someone called her a liar. And I said, no, she lied. It's a subtle difference, but it's profound.
Yeah.
And this is what happens so often with meal plans and women and trying to feed their family is they don't realize that something went wrong or they internalize it.
Yeah.
I screwed up. I'm a failure.
Yeah.
I suck.
Yeah.
And that drops them into this terrible place that does not serve.
Yeah.
It's very isolating. And the research around what weight stigma and shame does is overwhelmingly sad.
So the shame is attributing to I did this, or the guilt is
I am this.
Oh, okay.
The guilt is I did this.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yes.
Guilt is something that you can fix. I can say, Jen, I'm so sorry I stood you up, or I was late. I feel badly that I did that.
Yeah.
Let me make it up to you. Let me learn from that.
Yeah.
Guilt or shame is I'm a loser. I don't deserve Jen's love and friendship. I should just stop reaching out to her altogether, and I'm just going to disappear.
Spirals downward. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was really profound.
To despair. That sounds very despair.
It is.
Yeah.
And then what do people use to comfort themselves?
The very thing.
The very thing that they're trying not to. So then they spiral into overeating, using comfort food, stress eating, those kinds of things. That emotional eating gets deeper and stronger, and then they get a greater loss of trust for themselves around food.
So true. Let's talk a little bit here about this emotional eating, because I've talked to people, and many fit mamas will label themselves to me as emotional eaters and say, I'm an emotional eater. Or they'll say, I see my daughter is an emotional eater and she's gained some weight, and it's very stressful. This is a very stressful place to be. So talk to us about, how do we identify if that is the case, we are an emotional eater, or if our child is, and what do we do?
So in the broadest sense, we are all emotional eaters.
Okay.
Because whether we like it or not, food is emotional. I mean, if you think about it right from infancy, right? I'm uncomfortable. What is this feeling? I get milk. I feel better. Right?
Soothing, yeah.
So right from the beginning, there is that connection. And it's built in that way because we are built to not starve.
Yeah. Yeah.
And food does make us feel better. Food does alter our cortisol levels. Food can alter our neurotransmitters, our serotonin, our dopamine, our like all of it, right?
Yeah.
So there is an emotional component to eating.
Okay.
So then it just becomes where on the spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah,
Everyone
good. And
can
I'm glad that you clarified that,
Yeah.
right? Because someone takes that on as a big burden. I'm an emotional eater, and I'm going to now respond. So am I. We all are. So what's your deal? Like, how do we go about now moving forward and identifying? So keep going.
So in the Intuitive Eating 3rd edition, they do a really great job at going through this. In their, I think Principle 8 or something is about like dealing with your emotions without using food.
Okay.
And on that spectrum, they talk about there's the emotional eating in that, let's say, like my grandma made the best butter tarts, and I know everyone has a rival butter tart, but honestly, hers were the best. So when I bake those butter tarts, there's a huge feeling of connection. I wrote about this a little bit at Christmas time in my blog, and because as I'm baking these recipes from ancestors that have passed, I'm carrying on this tradition. So there's a big emotional connection. So when I eat those foods, I feel like I'm with them, right? And it's really powerful.
Yeah.
That kind of emotional eating, in the sense that I thoroughly enjoyed that tart and felt connected.
Yeah.
There's nothing problematic there. There's nothing clinical about that. That's just a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
Then there's I had a really crappy day.
Yeah.
I was fighting with my husband, or I had a difficult patient, or I got in a car accident on the way home, or whatever it is. Yeah. And now I've got the house to myself, and I deserve this. And I'm going to comfort myself with food, and I'm going to reward myself with food. Food reward is a really, again, a whole big topic that... yeah, I mean, I see it happening with kids at school, right?
Totally.
You do this, you guys get a treat day.
Totally.
Like, stop it.
Totally.
So when we have that kind of connection, it can then start to happen with more frequency. And it can then start to occur outside of our body's needs and our body's likes. I mean, if I decided that ice cream was going to be my thing, well, my body doesn't like ice cream. My body hates ice cream. My body is so abundantly clear that it doesn't like it, but I may eat it anyways. And I see that a lot. Patients come in with horrible experiences from eating food, but they eat it anyways because it's so intertwined, right? And it's hard to tease out. So then it can start to be a bit destructive, that kind of emotional eating. You've already had your supper, you're full, you're not biologically hungry, you don't actually need food, and yet you're filling that void with food. And again, that's different than what I talked about with that tart. Right?
Yeah.
I may not be hungry
response to stress
when I have that tart, but I'm going to taste it and savor it and connect with it, and it's going to be a beautiful experience.
And it's not all of them and then making more and becoming kind of intense.
It's not being scarfed back in a closet, which was one of part of my history was eating privately because I carried so much shame around that. So my binges were very often private, and it was never
uncommon.
Exactly, and it wasn't about the food because I wasn't tasting the food. It was just about filling something, right? And so again, that happens on varying degrees. Whether it's maybe I just have like a couple of tarts or a few cookies or whether I eat the whole bag and then hide it and buy more before anyone notices they were gone. And then it can go to the very other extreme, which was more like my binge eating, which was I didn't know how to handle any of those emotions. I didn't even know how to name them, let alone, so food was it was a way of punishing myself, for lack of better. So then this is the range of emotional eating. So where are you lying? How often is it happening? And what kind of feeling is happening after, right? So there's the shame with the binging, which is like, I am such a loser. There may be, I had that piece of cake and I feel really guilty about it. And then there's the neutral side, which is like, that was amazing. It gave me so much comfort and connection, and that was great, and now it's done. So that whole variety, and we unfortunately in our world try to not deal with emotions. We don't know how to deal with emotions. We can't name our emotions. Brene Brown talks about that emotional literacy and how important that is. And I have lots of clients that I work with where in one of the lessons online, there's I give them this feeling wheel. I give another one that's got emojis with different faces to try and help people learn how to even connect with what it is they're feeling, because they honestly don't know. They're just uncomfortable. And that discomfort
take that away,
can be as benign as boredom all the way to full-on shame and misery.
And so take us into, as moms, which is who we are here listening, and, we're dealing on the front lines with the next generation. And, I think all of us to some degree can really identify with what you've talked about here, what you've mentioned, because so many of us were raised in this typical environments of, confusion around food, let's say. And every year there's a new article about this superfood or that superfood, or now we can't eat this or we shouldn't eat that. And this one's going to lead us straight to the grave or something worse, right? So I think with all that landscape, how do we start to go about navigating not only ourselves, and I think that's maybe where we'll start, and then also I want to extend that into how do we instill in our kids what we would hope for them, right? Which is a relationship that doesn't involve a lot of stress around food. And even if we have it, we don't really still then want to pass it on to them, right? Yeah. So let's talk about that a little. If we are feeling this kind of stress around food, which I know myself, I can honestly say I still feel stress around food with my kids. And that is a place where I don't want to be. I don't want to be stressed around it. I want it to be enjoyable and fun. And it goes beyond stress of them wanting to help out because I want them to help and it's going to be a mess. Okay, no problem. But even the languaging, talking about healthy food versus not healthy food. And I know we've talked about that, about what they're teaching at school. And then those words that we use, good and bad, and then how those associate with things. So I want to kind of dive into that side of things.
One of the distinctions we've made in our house is yes, we still refer to them as treats, but more so we call them the pleasure foods.
Okay.
Because in this landscape of nutrition, we talk about the what. It's always the what. Mm-hmm. The cure, for lack of a better word on this day, is in the how and the why.
Okay.
Why are we eating? and how are we eating?
Okay.
Are we showing up because we're actually hungry, or are we showing up for other reasons? And the how. Are we sitting there guiltfully, or are we showing up happy and content and welcoming? Are we scarfing it back? Are we savoring it? Those are the kinds of things that have so much more power than the what. And
Because at the end of the day, we know, like, what you eat is half not even the most important part.
Exactly. And so this world that we're currently in, and that's our children are seeing too, is we spend all the time on the what. And so I think I forgot your question.
So speaking of, what do we actually do? I know. So we get into the why and the how, and I like that because that sounds to me like a little bit more about awareness, right? Yeah. Awareness of the motivating factors. And we're always talking in here at the Fit Mama podcast about the work into your workout. So it's similar. It's not about what you do and go to the gym or go to Zumba or work out on your floor at home. It's how are you showing up to that moment, and why are you doing it? Are you doing it to punish yourself because you ate a cupcake? And same, right? Yes. Those emotions get involved. So we can kind of tease that out by looking at those different questions, which I appreciate that. And then how do we start to wade through all of the information?
So that's why I ended up getting certified with the intuitive eating. That was I had come across their information probably 10 years ago, maybe longer than that.
So intuitive eating. Talk to us about this.
Eating. So
I want to hear more.
It's two dietitians out in California who experienced the same thing I did and experienced the same thing you did. Yep. People came to them, wanted a diet plan. They lost weight. They were doing great. They felt so good, pat themselves on the back. Yay, help more people. And yet those same people would come back within a couple of years, if they lasted that long, with the weight back. And the people felt like failures, and they were still coming back to them to find the answer. What did I do wrong? How can you help me? And they went, okay, this isn't working. So just like you and I came to that same, they did too. And what they did was they created this 10 principle system that has since been researched, which is amazing because that, you know me, I'm a geek there. I love it, right?
Galore,
So it was first written in 1995. Their third edition came out sometime in the last 5 years, maybe. And intuitive eating allows people to find their own diet. And, dieting has this funny word, but in the base meaning of it, like a cow's diet is grass.
Right.
My dog's diet is kibble.
Yeah.
And occasionally stuff that gets fed from the child. But generally our diet is simply what are we putting in our bodies, right? So in that, using that definition of diet, it is finding your diet. What works for your body? And that is a really powerful thing, right? Because what it means is you can take all of this amazing, amazing information that's pumping out of the nutrition research right now, because I don't want to dismiss this. We're in an incredibly robust time of information. Yeah. The problem is that this information is causing paralysis and confusion and frustration and a sense of defeat and family food fights, and it is causing chaos.
And long-term detrimental effects.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mentally, emotionally, physically.
Yeah. I mean, just recently, a woman came to me to talk about her daughter they have found she's been sneaking food. And, so we got into why is she sneaking food? Well, she's sneaking the foods that she's not allowed to eat because it's not on plan. It's not on the menu, but it's something she wants. And she's been denied it. And restriction leads to overconsumption. It's guaranteed.
It's like being backed in a corner.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I know we don't have time to get into food addiction fully and completely, but when you look at the studies, when they made these rats behave in an addictive way, they first had to starve them.
Totally.
The restriction is always the precursor, always. And yet what do? We restrict. It's the first thing we do, right?
Yeah.
It's our knee-jerk reaction because it's just, again, it's the landscape. It's what we're so used to, and people cannot imagine not restricting because to them that means the opposite, which is full on, I'm eating at all of the things all of the time. And that is not intuitive eating.
Yeah, talk to us about that. So I know I've had this conversation with many women, and this idea that what if that wasn't off limits, or what if you weren't restricting that food or this food? And I myself, even as a vegetarian, I came to a point where I had to stop being a vegetarian, and it wasn't because I gave up all my morals and ethics about animals, and it wasn't because everything that I read about health was gone void. It was the fact that when I felt that restriction, I felt like there was something wrong. There was something I wasn't allowed to do. And I didn't realize that until at least probably 6 years into being a vegetarian. And I thought, no, I am on a diet. Even if I'm not eating meat, the fact that I'm calling myself a vegetarian and looking on a menu and thinking, oh, that would be good, but I'm not going to have that. I'm going to have this because of what I decided. It just didn't feel right.
Yeah.
And that intuitively came to me to say, no, that this isn't working for you.
Yes.
So that I know is kind of, and I'm sure a lot of people come to that point.
I had a client I worked with for a couple of years, and she got to a really comfortable place with her own diet and her own nutrition. And so she was no longer in that place of crazy. Like, she was honoring her hunger, honoring her fullness. She had learned the tools to not eat emotionally in a self-harming way.
Right.
She had all of these skills, and then she came to me and she said, I would like to try going vegan. And I said, okay, what's the motivation here? Because, like, as you and I always talk about, you know, the tool itself is not good or bad. It's how are you wielding this sword?
Exactly. Even if I went 6 months eating vegan, but I wasn't sitting there going, I'm vegan, I have to look for vegan things. There's so much stress associated. Yeah.
So she said, I said, what's the motivation? She said, so she has fibromyalgia. That's her history. And she said, I've been reading some research and that it could really help with the pain. And I said, yep, I've read that research too. Okay, so what do you need me for? She said, well, I need to not go crazy while I do this. I said, great. So her approach was different in the way that we generally, so often when people make that decision, it's like big,
hardcore.
Right? It's really hard and masculine, and just like the cupboards get wiped out and everything changes literally overnight.
Yeah.
And then the satisfaction of the food disappears, the fun and preparing it. It takes a huge amount of bandwidth to even just make breakfast, because you have to think about stuff that you never had to think about before, right? Yeah. Which is a lot of why diets don't work, because then we're with our children, life happens, a family, an emergency, you get sick, and then there just literally is not enough bandwidth, and the site crashes, right? Yeah. So she took quite a bit of time to learn some new recipes, 1 or 2 a week. In the vegan, and so over months she developed this.
Wonderful.
And then once she was there, so we were meeting every couple of weeks, and at one point she said, you know what, I really miss beef. I said, okay, what are you gonna do? She said, I'm gonna try beef. I said, okay, super. Because this is one of the things that people forget, right? That people go, oh, I feel so much better eating this way, but they never actually reintroduce any of the things to find out what it was, right? Yeah. So for her, beef was something that didn't bother her, and so she eats it a few times a month when she wants it. She did miss dairy. She brought that back in. It increased her pain, so she doesn't eat the dairy. She brought eggs back, so she played with what did her body want. And that's the power of the intuitive eating. Once you get through the hows and the whys, then the what is not so hard.
Right. Yeah.
If that makes sense.
That totally makes sense. And I like, it goes back to what you were saying at the beginning about giving your power away. It's like it was never yours because you were following some, rote diet plan called this or that.
Yes.
And it wasn't, my body is feeling like this, or right now I'm really wanting this for lunch and this is on the plan and I'm not satisfied. And I'm still, all I can think about is food, right?
Yes.
And I know I read a study recently that they had men that they restricted their food, and these men started out of nowhere, no history of doing it, started researching recipes, becoming obsessed with food online, finding like Pinterest and different food blogs to follow, and all this stuff came from just restricting their food.
Yeah.
So that to me, I know you talked about that a little earlier, that's kind of the beginning. And, I love Instagram and Pinterest and all the things, so it really is ideas, and it gives you an opportunity to say, wow, that looks good, maybe I could make that, or wow, when I'm on vacation, I could drink green juice too, because that would be good. But then when you go there and you get sick or you have extreme diarrhea from your green juice, it's nice to know that you can leave room for going, okay, you know what? I'm going to maybe introduce green juice back home when I go. But right now, I'm going to eat the things that feel good, that I'm wanting to eat. I'm in Belgium and I want to have waffles or whatever. And fitting into our lives. Now, how do you sort of help people get from this place of, this is scary? I remember even I went around the world on my trip with my kids and my husband. That was 2015. And I remember even at that time being like, a few years ago, I don't think I would have been as calm doing this because I was much more quote unquote controlled with what I was eating, and I didn't eat out a lot, and I was like, just more focused on eating certain foods and avoiding others, that restaurants was really not the best place to be at.
Yeah.
I would have missed an experience like traveling around the world and eating whatever freely and enjoying because of that feeling of the need to control. So how do you get people from that place of, well, I'm doing this because it's noble, I'm doing this because I'm wanting to be fit and trim and healthy and live a long life and all the things, and that's honorable and great, to not take it to that place of getting into the crazy that you talk about, or starting to back up from that crazy point?
Well, I think the first thing, and I just give this out as a warning because why it took me so long to get to the point where I was okay and intuitive eating was a real option, was when I first read a lot of the anti-dieting stuff, there was that excitement of no food rules.
Right.
And so I just abandoned all of my food rules and made all foods good to go. And of course I overate. And I, show up for dinner absolutely starving. Well, cookies are allowed, and I'd eat a whole bag of cookies for dinner, and clearly that didn't feel good. So my warning, first and foremost, is don't abandon your food rules off top.
Right.
It needs to be done once a lot of other factors are in place, and that is honoring.
That's really good advice. Yeah.
It's one of the biggest misconceptions about my work is people go, it's just an excuse to binge. It's just, and I mean, my work is based in love and in respect. And when you love and respect your body, you're going to take care of it, which a bag of cookies for dinner, okay, maybe on the odd time if that's really your thing, but it rarely feels good to eat a bag of cookies for dinner.
Yeah.
And not even from an emotional, I'm like just talking purely physical. It doesn't feel good,
definitely.
right? It's not nourishing. So it's about honoring your hunger, honoring your fullness. Emotional eating can't be dealt in the realm of the what. It's not about, okay, just restrict the sugar and your emotional eating goes away. It doesn't work that way. So there needs to be layers and depths to it. And that, in my experience, isn't done well on your own. Shame often keeps people trying it on their own, and it keeps them stuck there for a long time. But it's about finding the right people to guide you through, right? And people who understand where you've been and where you're trying to get out, what you're trying to pass on to your children. And that, yes, your health is super important, and you're not looking to be, you're not ready to jump on the fat activism bandwagon, and I'm okay with that. You don't have to be there to do this.
Right.
This is about creating a really healthy relationship with food and being able to pass that off to your kids. And so I generally work with people either one-on-one or I do group programs.
Okay, awesome.
With a combination of online lessons and tips and tools, and there's infographics and there's videos and there's meditations.
So you're actually teaching people how to tune in to their intuition? Because I know that's not commonly, where are we taught that? In math class? Like, we aren't taught. Listen to your body. And this is what forever I'm finding myself talking about with people. And what we're doing, I always find, is undoing the doing of all these years. Because we condition our bodies to feel these certain things that they don't really want to do or feel, but it's over and over. We repeat it, so it becomes the way, right? So it sounds to me like you're probably really getting in there and helping people tune in and get out of the noise, because there's so much noise, right?
Absolutely.
And I know people will ask me with respect to exercising, it's like, when I get up in the morning and I'm so tired, like, how do I know if it's because I need to sleep longer or I'm being lazy? Right?
Yeah.
And I think the same goes for this. It's like, I'm listening to my body, and how do I know it's not, I really want cookies, or I'm binging on cookies because I had a hard day at
Yep.
work or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, it's really kind of teasing that apart, as you said. Do you find that's a lot what you do?
Absolutely. And the answer to that is it depends. It's all that I equate it to learning a new language, right? Intuitive eating, just like your inner size, is a new language. It is not what we have been taught in pop culture from our parents, from our teachers. And so what happens is you can buy a book, you can do one of our programs self-directed, and you get the basics of it. But I couldn't take a couple of French classes and move to France and think that I was just going to communicate freely and not screw up. I'm going to ask for the wrong thing. I'm going to call someone an interesting name. Something weird's going to go on. And so it's having a local who really understands all the colloquial terms and those nuances, right? And that's where you can take a principle like make peace with food from intuitive eating, and it can get morphed into this excuse to binge. Or it can, honor your hunger can get morphed into thou shalt never eat unless hunger is at a 3. Because we can take our old paradigms and try and superimpose them into this new world. So having people who get it to help tease out some of those pieces. And the truth is sometimes you're going to get it wrong. There are days with that. I wake up in the middle of the night starving because I underate. Well, I didn't do it on purpose. I thought I was honoring my body. Probably I was distracted and busy and wasn't actually listening close enough, and I only ate to stop feeling starving instead of eating until I was comfortably full. Or the flip side can happen when I'm not paying attention and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay, too much. But it's learning. It's just learning as we go, and having compassion and empathy for yourself to know that you're going to fall and that's okay. And being able to get back up and not turn that into shame.
You know what? I'm glad that you brought that back to shame, because I was just going to go into this idea of emotions again. And I'm seeing this very clear connection to everything that you're saying. And I think it's going to segue nicely into what I want to talk about next with respect to the kids and modeling and conversation is around, I know as a parent, if I've had a frustrated day or I'm tired or I'm feeling this emotion or that emotion, I don't always show up as the best version of myself to my kids, right? And I'm sure we can all kind of remember a time, right? Or more. So, speaking of shame, right? Or guilt, right? And those emotions come out. So when we're in that low, place where we're feeling that shame or guilt, we already feel like a bad mom, we already feel this, and then, we're going, oh my God, my kid doesn't even eat vegetables, like the world is ending. And in that moment, where do you go for these women to regulate their emotions in a way that they then can communicate clearly without bringing in all the old baggage?
Again, it takes a lot of practice.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah. Even just identifying that it happens, right? That's why
even
I kind
to
of
come back to the
up.
Fitbit and calorie conversation with my son, I didn't handle it well. And what I had to do was
emotions got the best of you.
And I shut down his ability to share what was going on, right? And this is what we do without even realizing it. So I owned it. I apologized for my behavior, and I invited him to talk to me about it whenever he's ready. That's the best I can do. And that's how I can feel guilty about how I handled it without turning it into I'm a bad mom. I'm not a bad mom. I'm a good mom. I just had a moment where I let myself get very reactive because of my own scripts, my own stories, my own frustration about, I'm like, oh my God, you can't get into calorie counting. What the F? Freak. And so I jumped on him. So I just, as soon as I became aware, I looked at my husband, I was like,
he's going to do drugs on the road. Like, I love it.
I know. It's like the gateway.
Oh, God.
But I mean, for him, he has the opposite problem. I mean, he's built like his dad. He's scrawny, and he talks a lot about how scrawny he is and how skinny he is because he gets teased about that.
Of course.
And then his other friend gets teased for being fat. And I mean, in this, we have created a game no one can win, including our children. And that's why it's important that we change. And we need to change the way we relate to food so that we can teach that to our children. It's very difficult to teach a child to eat intuitively if you yourself haven't done it. And I still make mistakes, and I still have calls with the authors of the book. I phone book sessions, and I'm like, how do I handle this? And it's, you know, it's rarely about me. It's about my kid more than anything else, because I'm trying to not let my history overpower his own experience in life. And sometimes because parents say this to me too, they're like, what, so you just let him eat whatever he wants whenever he wants? Well, gosh, no. He doesn't have the ability or skill to do that. I have to teach him that. So yes, we have guidelines around food, but sometimes we eat chocolate for breakfast. And that's okay, right? Sometimes we have dessert first. Sometimes we don't eat at the table. Sometimes, but most of the time, we are connecting with their food and connecting with each other. And food is not a battleground in our house. And that is beautiful to me.
Yes, absolutely. So what can we look for if we're finding that we're getting stressed? Obviously, if it's stressful around mealtime, that's something that, you know, that would be a good person to say, hey, you know, what's going on here, right? So what other things can we see in our environment or start to notice that go, okay, I got to tune into what's really going on here. Maybe it's my emotions. I got to connect it to my intuitive side of things. Yeah. What other symptoms, let's say, show up, you know? Yelling, throwing food, hiding food, like...
Yeah. That happens with kids. It happens with adults. If you yourself find yourself hiding wrappers, that's a big one. Only eating in the car, that was a big one during my worst of my eating disorder. I would just eat in my car and then get rid of the evidence. If you're constantly thinking about food, it is actually probably because you're hungry and not because you're a food addict. This is something that's just one of the very first principle of intuitive eating, and the very first principle that I taught in any of my diet rebellion programs was honor your hunger, eat methodically, eat regularly, and eat enough. Again, we keep going to restriction first, and people are eating. Well, for instance, do I have time for a quick story?
Yes.
I went to a yoga retreat, and I love the woman who was cooking for us. I love the woman who was running the event. Like, they're incredible women, just fill my cup in so many ways. And for breakfast, we were served chia pudding in mini mason jars. And it was delicious. It was done with a coconut base because it was all vegan, and this coconut whip with these berries and nuts and seeds. It was delicious and nowhere near enough food for me. So there we are on the sup boards out on the river doing our thing, and all I can think about is, I wonder when lunch is. I wonder what we're going to have. I wonder. I was not able to be present with the experience. And yes, I fell off my board more than once as a result of that, because you can't balance certain poses on a sup board while thinking about food. I was really, really hungry, and it detracted, is that a word? From my experience. And I wasn't able to connect with people. And so my roommate, she's also someone who likes to eat. And her and I talked about food. We were like this menu we were talking about. All we talked about was our favorite foods and what we would cook. And man, I'd go for a steak right now. And so I didn't get to necessarily connect in the way that I would love to. So that is a big sign that there's something amiss too. If all you can think about is food, there is probably some biological requirements that are not being met.
Great point.
And your children too. I mean, if they're freaking out when they get home, or they're acting out, hunger is a big thing. And this is something that happens when people do the extreme changes. Is children won't eat quinoa when they're used to potatoes. I don't like quinoa. As a naturopath, I feel sometimes obliged to like kale and quinoa, and I don't like either of them. And when you put them together, it's not good. I just don't enjoy them. And that's okay. My husband and my kid enjoy it, so I cook it for them, but then I make myself something else too. Because I don't like it. It just, if you're fighting about food, there's deeper things that need to happen. And when parents take the stance of, this is what's for dinner and you will eat, and if you don't eat it now, you're going to eat it later, and if you don't eat it then, you're going to eat it for breakfast, and if you don't eat it for breakfast, you're going to eat it. It is not going, it becomes this power struggle that is, it's just not going to teach the lesson that you were intending to teach. They are going to learn something else, which is that they should eat privately, that you don't trust them, that there's going to be all kinds of dialogues going on in the background. And this is what I see, especially with the girls.
Oh, thank you for saying that. And thank you for, bringing up all those points and the stories that you have. And we could talk for about a decade straight. So we won't do that to the Fit Mamas today, but we will have you back on the podcast in the future, Kerri, because you are just such an incredible resource. And I'm so glad that the Diet Rebellion exists. I'm so glad that you have so much knowledge around this idea of intuitive eating, which is, from what I can see, going to be the one and only way that is going to be of the future. So in the next few years, the diet deal is going to fizzle out to a complete halt.
I hope so.
Thankfully. And as you and I are both keen to teach always is about that, it's not outside of you. All the answers and all that you need is already within you.
Yes.
And I think connecting to that intuition, especially around something so interconnected to our feelings and food. I love what you said about not worrying so much about the what and really focusing on the why and the how. And I think if there's one piece that the Fit Mamas can go away from today, it's noticing that you do think so much about eating this or not eating that, or, even the timing of when you're eating, or am I fasting, or am I doing this juice or whatever. But when it comes down to it, are you tuning in?
Exactly.
Right? Are you hearing any of the messages that your body is sending to you, telling you, yes, more of this, or never again with that? But we still try and override all these things. Yeah. So hearing that little inner voice that is there to share love with us. And I love that your approach is so based on love. And obviously we know I'm the keenest of all that. But it really goes to show, because we think, and you alluded to this earlier, that we go, oh, well, I deserve this cake at the end of the night, right? And I'll be the first one to tell you, you do deserve anything and you are fabulous.
Absolutely.
But is that cake taking you further away from the feeling good that you're really going for? And, we talk about this a lot, that it's like, I want to feel good. Oh, that purse that I buy is going to make me feel good. Oh, that job I get. Oh, that husband I marry. Those are going to make me feel good. But the option is always feel good now.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's what I think you are exactly talking about here with the food, is like, you don't have to change your diet or start a new diet or join the plan or call yourself vegan or paleo or whatever. It's eat food. Listen to what your body's saying and eat some food.
And have a huge amount of compassion while you do that, because none of us have been taught this. Yes. And it takes time. And no, you're not just going to flick a switch and suddenly be totally attuned with what your body needs. Like you were saying, I still struggle with that sometimes. Exactly. Do I need to move, or do I need to go back to bed?
Yes.
Some days I'm not sure. When I'm tired, because tiredness will bring out more of the hunger hormones. Well, are they because I actually need more food, or is it because I need more sleep? And sometimes I get it wrong and wake up in the night and have to eat. And other times I get it right and I wake up in the morning and I feel amazing. It's being patient and going, wow, wasn't that interesting? Instead of, oh, Kerri, you suck.
Exactly.
It's just such a different conversation, and it allows it to be playful and fun and
seeing it as a practice and a journey, right?
Absolutely.
It's not like, oh, I have to achieve this goal weight or something.
And it allows the flexibility to change with our life, you and I are in this stage of life where we're raising our kids and dealing with our parents, but you know what? Perimenopause is not that far away. Our bodies are going to change, our needs are going to change. So guess what? Our food is probably going to change. And that's
the more
okay.
we can connect and learn already.
And as we age and as our children grow and shift, and the flexibility needs to be there. And my body needs what it needs today, and it will tell me that if I listen. No one else is ever going to know how many calories I need or how many grams of this or that I need
no
better
than me.
It doesn't matter
what you're wearing, Fitbit or anything.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Kerri, for all your wisdom.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, and we will see you again soon.
So I hope you enjoyed that episode with Dr. Kerri and myself. We had covered a lot in that one, I know. But I really want to highlight a few points to go and check out in the show notes. So that is Dr. Kerri. She has an amazing group. So go check it out. The link will be in the show notes. It's called Applaud Your Bod. It's a great positive environment. Great place to hang out. She has a diet escape plan, which I think is such a brilliant thing. So that is another link we will be including in the show notes, because the diet escape plan is going to feel good when you do not have to subscribe to any diet. You do not have to call yourself any type of diet name. You can intuitively listen for what your body's needing today and eat that and see how you go, and starting to get that mind talk out of the way to start to listen to what your body's actually saying. So Dr. Kerri, thank you again for being here. This is such a gift to the Fit Mamas. Thank you, listener Fit Mama, for being here. I'm so grateful. Please reach out anytime, and we will see you soon. Have a great week. Namaste.